Hello and welcome to Harvest's only official podcast, Drop the Mic, where we kick out the lead pastor and just ramble on for, what, we got 3-4 hours?
Oh, yeah, we got all day. Everybody thinks Mike is too long. You just wait, people.
I'm Isaac, if that matters.
Yeah, special guest today.
Yeah.
You know, for those of you who don't know Isaac, he's just a weird and interesting character. He's got no shoes on.
Weirder the more you know me.
He never has shoes on. He has no shoes on right now. He drew me a picture
and fan that
and wrote a poem for me.
Audience, it's because you were late.
Well, I was late, and and we're just blessed to have him here today. So, breaking news bulletin that I don't think anybody knows.
We're starting with this?
Oh, we're starting with it. The whole reason we have you on is because we got to find out who is Isaac, because I'm here to announce, folks, I think we're sitting with the newest official pastor of Harvest Church. So
there's no clap track in the background.
No, they'll add one. Yeah, so Isaac's been around for way longer than I've been around. So I think a bunch of you guys know him out there, know him and love him. And I think it's really been a long time coming. So it was life timing, different things and callings that the Lord had you doing. But I think right time, right place. And we've got a slot. And so, hey, we're taking a leap of faith and bringing Isaac on board.
We've got an empty space. Might as well put a warm body in it.
Might as well put a warm body in it. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to get to know you a little bit.
Okay.
Because although you've been around a long time, I don't know that everybody has the whole story. So we're going to do this just like we did any other of the Spotlight episodes. We're going to channel Sean Ryan here and say, where'd you grow up? How did you end up at Harvest Church? When did you meet Christ? We'll go through the whole list of normal Christian autobiographical questions.
All right, you keep putting guardrails on. You keep reminding me of what I'm doing, and I'll just keep talking. I grew up, I could probably see my house from here in Katanning, Pennsylvania. Got birthed at Armstrong Hospital. Is that how you say it?
I think so. ACMH?
Yeah.
I don't even know. I just moved here. I just know you're not supposed to go to Armstrong Hospital.
Yeah,
that's all
I
would
reiterate that. In fact, once when I was a teenager, I broke my arm playing football and went to ACMH, got an x-ray. They said, you're fine. I played football for 3 weeks with a makeshift cast just made out of ace bandages, and then went to a specialist after 3 weeks, and he's like, here's your original x-ray that you got there. You see that line through the bone right there? It's been broken. So, yes, I would agree. So born at ACMH 6 days before my wife, who was also born at ACMH. We just missed each other.
Were you betrothed right then?
Yes, it was an arranged marriage by the nurses. Yeah. Grew up going to a church in Ford City, Assemblies of God, so like Pentecostal, charismatic, if you're familiar with that grouping. Went to Katanning my whole life except for 1 year when I did cyber school as a...
Katanning High School?
Yes.
So this is back when the high school was downtown?
Yeah, I graduated from the high school, second in my class, which is a big deal.
Nice.
I was going places.
Tell you what, shows you what the standards are around here.
Hey, you're about to hire me.
I was second in my class, too.
Yeah, we're just as smart as each other. Which, by the way, I just saw our new videos. John Roofner putting out Bible study videos. I don't think I can be called the professor anymore. I feel like I lost that
God
title.
is blessing
that dude
us.
Is brilliant.
Bunch of pointy-headed guys around here. It's kind of nice.
Crazy.
Just normalizing nerdism.
Yeah.
Making nerds cool again.
I love
That's
it.
what we're gonna do around here. So you graduated from downtown.
Yep.
When did you graduate?
2011.
How old are you?
Right now I'm 32.
All right. Making me feel old.
As you should.
Okay, so what did you want to do with your life? So it's like classic, you graduate from high school, everybody just stares at you and said,
well,
all right, young man, what are you doing?
Let's rewind, because where I went was way less important than who I became.
So you grew up Christian household.
Yes.
We already covered that.
Parents became Christians just years before having me. Like, I have an older brother, 6 years older than me. They weren't really Christians then. They became Christians after he was born. And then my older sister, who's 2 years older than me, who people around here usually recognize but don't know that she's my sister, Samantha Cox, because she's a foot shorter than me. And so my parents were Christians by the time I came along, trying to figure it out. But and we went to that Assemblies of God church, which actually has there's a lot of people here that have roots in that church. Little Fred, who came and left. Mon, who's here now, Monica Clinch, has got some connections to that church. It laid a good foundation, but the way I talk about it is that I don't recall ever hearing the gospel there. Now, when I say that, even yesterday, so currently, before I get hired here, I'm in the education sphere, and I was just talking about to someone how, like, you have to keep reiterating to kids the gospel. Like, you can never assume that they've got it. It starts with you tell them a dozen times, and then they interact with it 9 times, and then by the time that they're regurgitating it and reiterating it themselves half a dozen times, then you can be like, okay, I think we did our job where they heard it at least. But so I suspect that in this church, when I say I never heard the gospel, what it really was I was a kid who just needed told more. Like, I don't know that it was the failing of this church, but I remember the moment that we had a family meeting, first and only ever family meeting.
I've had a few of these,
and
it's common practice in my household. It's very uncomfortable.
It was scary, yeah. So our parents sat us down and said they felt like the Lord was telling them we need to leave this church. That I think I was 12 at that time, so had been there forever. And we knew we were going to have to start shopping around. And our first attempt was Harvest, even though it was the cult on the hill. Like, we tried to avoid it. In fact, we came here
That's
once.
what happens with cults.
Yeah.
You can't avoid them. They
no, the
suck
funny
you
thing
in.
was, the only thing I remember having heard about Harvest was they didn't let you speak in tongues. And that was a big no-no for where we came from. So... we came up here and then tried out a couple other churches, and then eventually came back here just because of the community and the preaching. And I don't remember Mike's words specifically. Now, I remember very early on a sermon about...
Was Mike... So you're 12.
Mike had been here for less than a year.
Less than a year.
Yeah.
But he was here.
Yeah.
And so this is 2006? Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. And... yeah, I again don't remember the specifics of what he was saying, but I remember, like, that was the first time the gospel made sense. Is like and it was, I think, my very first sermon here. Like, this guy is fun to listen to, and he's articulate, but he's really explaining the truth of the gospel. That I knew I was a sinner. I never wrestled with that at all. I remember being a kid. I was probably 6 or 7 years old. I remember laying in my bed wide awake at night crying because I was trying to think about eternity. Apparently, I was a mini philosopher.
Dude, we have very similar stories.
So
12-year-old Will was an insomniac because of this exact topic.
Yeah, it was just like thinking about, like, at that point, so I don't know when I became a Christian. I suspect it was when I came here. But I was always a good kid. Like, I never broke the rules. My parents even say that today. Like, I just was never a problem. But those thoughts of why am I here, and, like, trying to fathom the weight of forever and, like,
existence,
all that stuff.
Itself.
Yeah. Plus, there's a lot of interchangeability with the charismatic Christian movement and Catholicism, so the Catholic guilt is, like, deeply ingrained in it, and so I had that my whole life. So it's like I may have been a goody two shoes, but I was racked with guilt.
It's no wonder we get along so well. It's like you're describing 11-year-old Will, only from the Catholic side.
It's especially for a kid. Like, I don't envy anyone's teenage years. I think they're the worst years possible.
Angst.
Yeah, but, like, to sprinkle in, like, every time you sin, thinking I'm gonna die for this. Like, it's just horrible, you know. Like, it sucks. I remember the day I got baptized. I was 7 years old when I got baptized in this Pentecostal church, and I don't remember receiving any instruction, any explanation about what was going on, but I remember very vividly standing at a urinal. I think it was right before I got baptized, with my friend who was a year older than me, and he said, now that you're baptized, it means you're not allowed to sin anymore. That was my only doctrine. Like, that was my only teaching. So that just, like, added to it. It messed me up, man. So, like, I had the issue of, I'm always thinking, like, what if I thought this bad thought, and then a bus hits me,
And then you already used up your one baptism.
Yeah, like, I got saved every week. I confessed my sins as often as I thought of them, like, and I was just, so when I came here and I see this guy preaching who just, like, is willing to not take himself seriously but takes the gospel really seriously and reminds us, like, I had the sin part, that was covered, but the reminder that God has grace on his people because of the sacrifice of Jesus, it changed my life. And I have a story. If we have time for it, I'll share it later. But into that,
just a rabbit trail for a second. So I had a group over at my house last night doing a study, and we got in a sidebar conversation talking about guys with bullhorns yelling fire and brimstone, like at events.
One of those guys, like, verbally fought. No,
everybody knows what I'm talking about, right? On the street corner, or you go to, like, some sort of sporting event or whatever. There's somebody yelling, "You have to repent, or you're all going to hell," from a bullhorn. The guys I was sitting with talking about how we'll cast it in the best light is ineffective or an inefficient way to do evangelism, and they were basically saying that, like, nobody should do it. And then I cautioned them that, like, okay, I'm not saying it's the style of evangelism that I think we should all do, but I have a vivid memory of, I was not a teenager anymore. I was probably like 21, being at a NASCAR race, drunk, where a guy was bullhorning fire and brimstone, and everybody else was just, like, making fun of him, and I was, like, joining in the making fun of him. But in my heart, it was hitting me. Like,
that's awesome.
For those of us who are couched with the guilt from childhood, and I don't know what magic happens that you end up being, like, a guilty child, but it sounds like you and I both were. It does make you cry out for a savior at some point in time. So I don't know.
Or descend into madness.
Yeah. To just become like Nietzsche and be the madman in the square.
Yeah. Well, and that's related to, like, I think it's the D.L. Moody quote that Mike's talked about before. I like the way I do evangelism better than the way you don't do it.
Yeah. So, right.
There's something to be said about that.
Right. So as distasteful as the bullhorn guys might be to you, sometimes they're secretly doing work on people's hearts.
I got into a heated argument with one of those guys in Vegas, of all places.
What was your protest? Was he?
I was just trying to shut him up for a couple minutes, and I wanted to like find some common ground in being brothers in Christ. I suspect he was not, but it got.
You suspect he was not a brother in Christ?
Yeah.
Even though he had a bullhorn and was yelling about hellfire.
Yeah. Well, his thing was like, you're all sinners and God's going to kill you, but he couldn't, at least not in my presence, couldn't articulate the gospel. And it got so heated at one point, and I had a Bible in my pocket, and I couldn't get it out, so I'm pulling it out, but it looked like I'm pulling out a weapon. It was a tense moment. It was cool. He didn't get saved. I didn't get saved. We walked away, and he kept yelling.
Be careful pulling hidden objects out of your pants, everybody, in public areas, particularly around these parts. Okay, so you potentially get saved at Harvest, or at least you have your awakening to the gospel.
I'd say that's a fair way to say
at Harvest. Yeah. Okay, so that's in your early teen years.
Yeah, and I think I've been trying to figure out a way to articulate this for years, but something that's always been in me is I've always searched for guys who don't take themselves seriously but take the gospel seriously. And I think I'm learning that is my test for maturity in a man. If you can look at a person and they're willing to goof around and have fun, but they understand the serious weight and the beauty of the gospel, like that, there's something to be said about that. And they were just everywhere here at Harvest. Even Mike's son Nick was one of my closest friends, and he had it in him. And So it was so formative and so helpful for my growth. And then I did that thing where you become the guy who's super annoying with doctrine. I think I scared away a couple Sunday school teachers that were here that never came back because I'd just argue with them all the time.
We call this the cage stage for young men. Young men of a certain disposition get saved, and then all of a sudden just need to be put in a cage for a couple years until they mellow I had
a
know
good
everything. They know better. You're doing it wrong, and why are you being so stupid?
I had a solid year of getting into the YouTube comments. I was like, I'm gonna fix this whole thing.
Classic, everybody.
Yeah,
I like it. I didn't know any of that. You were a YouTube commenter, huh?
Yeah, that was my only contribution to media.
I've never actually typed anything in the comments. My wife just hears all my comments. I fix the YouTube videos by griping to my wife about them.
I thought about getting into a fight with a guy a couple podcasts ago. I think, did I tell you about the doxology thing?
You did.
And I commented back, but
he might be listening. You can talk to him.
Fruitless. They like the doxology, whatever your name was. So annoying to me. It was good. Like, I love that moment where you guys just like broke into singing about the doxology.
We just don't take ourselves too seriously.
Yeah, see, it's a mark of maturity.
But
prove me wrong.
Yeah, well, the funny thing, we sang the doxology on a previous podcast. If you missed it, it was terrible. Don't go back and listen to it. And somebody thought we did it a disservice because
well,
we were
I
joking
started
around.
the comment saying this is the greatest moment in podcast history because I love the doxology. Like,
yeah,
my daughter's like your daughter.
Well, we sang it together once in the woods.
Yeah, forgot about that.
Yeah, when I was having a moment. So anyway, that's for another time.
So I dropped that comment about how awesome the moment was, and the guy decided to comment and say what they're how do you say it? Something like their insulting of the doxology. And I was like, whoa, did we watch two different podcasts?
Yeah, we didn't mean to insult it. I'm sorry if we didn't do it justice. But I do love it. If
Mike were here, he wouldn't back down.
No,
he wouldn't apologize.
But I will say, I do love it. My 3-year-old daughter, his 3-year-old daughter, both know it already, if that says anything about how we think about it. Yeah, so when she was an infant, that was my lullaby. Because the easy little tune. So anyway, all right. So we're getting back. You're saved now. You're at Harvest.
I'm in high
You're
school.
in the cage stage,
Yep.
being a jerkwad to everybody.
Not like it was a toned down. I've never been able to be that much of a jerk, but I was definitely.
But you were second in your
my
class.
Faith.
You knew.
Yeah,
You
it was a big
knew.
deal, everybody.
Have you people even read the Bible before?
Which was funny because we have this weird season where my dad left Harvest because they had some theological issues, mostly centering around once saved, always saved. So they pulled Mike in because
A surety.
Yeah, he preached a sermon where he used the example like if you're a Christian and you rob a bank and you're killed while you rob the bank, you're going to heaven. And my dad had a childhood friend at the church who always wrestled with his faith, who would later go on, I think he killed himself about a decade ago. He always wrestled with his faith, and that really bothered him that Mike would, like, I guess, in his eyes, gamble with eternity like that. And so they sat Mike down and shared our Pentecostal beliefs, and it didn't sit well with my dad. The funny thing is, my dad eventually came back because even though he didn't like the content of Mike's sermons, he loves Mike as a preacher.
Yeah.
And so he's back. But
Well, and I would say, I think, I don't want to put words in Mike's mouth. So these will represent my own words, not Mike's. You know, I think the missing phrase there, which you do hear Mike say in various sermons all the time, depending on the text being exegeted, it's once saved, always saved, if you're saved.
Yeah.
You do got to throw that if you're saved thing in there because Jesus throws out some harsh warnings in a few places, right? And then you get all the warnings, the admonitions from Paul and the writer of Hebrews and James to not fall away.
Yeah, Hebrews is a big one.
Don't fall
Hold
away.
fast
So
to your faith.
what are you falling away from? So it's like, yeah. Anyway, not to go into a nuanced doctrine there, but Yeah.
So that was that season, even though I was arguing for my faith a lot and like learning the scriptures, that was the big thing that stood out in my mind. And there was one other kid that agreed with me, and it was us against the world. And then he got convinced by Romans 8 that we were wrong. And I was like, you loser, like you quitter, you know? And then eventually it was the realization, like learning what God's grace really is and what faith really is that brought me to the other side as well. But yeah, so in high school, I don't know. I've always been fairly smart, like, you know, small town smart.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought I was going to do something that required a medical degree. I threw back the idea of becoming an anesthesiologist at one point, just because they make good money.
It's an awesome profession.
And that was about it. And then as my relationship developed with my now wife.
Well, before we get there, so did you like applied to school? Did you go to?
Yeah, so I'm still talking about high school right now, but
okay.
I only
so your plan right now
schools.
Is you're going to go to some sort of college to start on a pre-med
this is
path.
probably like my junior year. I'm thinking this. But as I thought about like who am I and what am I good at, my answer was nothing. However,
you're only in high school.
Yeah.
Of course.
However, I like the Bible and I like doing hard things, because that's another like major facet of my life, is who I've become has mostly revolved around becoming someone opposite of who I didn't want to be, if that makes sense. Like I remember when I was a kid, like my father expressing the fact that I had no common sense, even though I was smart, and I never followed through on things. And so I was like, I'm going to prove him wrong, you know? And I became someone who was dependable and someone who could think through situations. And
way to go, Dad. It worked.
Yeah, thanks, Dad.
It worked.
He and I just talked about this
fathering.
recently, which the funny thing was, he was paying me a compliment and he was like, you really turned that around. While meanwhile, my sister's like, I still tell everyone you have no common sense. I was like, dang it, I can't win. So, it was at that time that I started to toy with the idea of becoming a missionary. And
in high school already.
In high school, yeah. And the fact that the woman who would become my wife knew she wanted to be a missionary was helpful in it. But I didn't know what a missionary was. In fact, I don't think I could have articulated well what a missionary was until I was a year into being a missionary. So that's bad, but that's just how it went. I think that's the story of my life, like learning things as I go. Harvest always used to talk about putting the wheels on the car as it drove down the road.
Uh-huh.
That was my life.
Yeah, the school of hard knocks.
Yeah.
So your betrothal worked out.
Yep. We actually, when our freshman year of college, so I finally decided I was going to do something in the ministry. She went to one college, I went to another. She was in Indiana State, I was in South Carolina. And
at Columbia.
Yes.
So you ended up applying to and going to the same school that Mike went to originally.
It was because of Mike. Yeah, Mike went to seminary there, and he was like, they have a good missions program, you should go there. And they were willing to take money off because he went there and stuff like that. So I ended up there, and my first break, so fall break, we came back, and Mike, and I think Big Fred maybe, I can't remember, a couple of the elders approached me and said, hey, we heard you were interested in missions. We're going to send some people if you want to be a part of this, and if you're serious about your relationship with Danielle, let's have a conversation. So my freshman year of college, my whole life changed because we decided that we were going to be on the team that would eventually go to I don't know if I'm allowed to.
Southeast Asia.
Yeah. So
AKA the 1016 team.
Yes.
If you know, you know. If you don't know, just ask somebody not on the internet and we'll tell you. It's not a secret, but this is on the internet. So
yeah. So at that point, my life was plotted out. Our lives were plotted out. We were just dating at that point. But we knew that in the next 4 to 5 years, we were both gonna finish college, and then we were gonna ship out to Asia. and I just followed along up till that point, which is probably why I couldn't have articulated well what a missionary was, because I never had to. I just
you weren't driving the car.
Yeah,
you just
exactly.
I'll get in this car.
That's right.
I like where it's going and who's driving it.
Yeah, and I thank God for that time in that country, because it changed me. Like it.
Well, yeah. Let's not bounce over it. I mean, we're gonna have to be careful with details here. Yeah. So how long? What degree did you end up coming out of Columbia with?
I finished with a double major in Bible and biblical languages. So I learned Hebrew and Greek and a little bit of Aramaic for translation stuff. I thought, like, if this whole stuff with Harvest falls through, I could just do Bible translating, so I'd still get what I wanted to do. And yeah, it turns out I love learning languages. So
nice. That's rare. Not all people do. Most people find languages arduous. I find languages arduous.
I got called stupid by one of my professors because it took me so long to get it. No, he wasn't. But I'm just in any room, I'm the slowest thinker, and I've learned to be okay with that. But I'll think the crap out of a situation, but it takes me a minute to catch up to where normal people think. So
that's probably a gift. You know, I'm a quick thinker, but it can get you into more trouble because you often don't think as carefully as you should. Yeah. You just, I don't know. Quick thinking's like quick speaking. You can quickly speak yourself into a bad situation. You can quickly think yourself into a bad situation too. So, okay, so you finish up there as 4 years, the classic 4-year bachelor's degree.
Mm-hmm.
And then how long did it take from there? So when did you graduate school? Let's start there.
Graduated
what year
college,
are we talking about?
2015. By spring of 2017, we were moving to that country.
So it's 2-year interim.
Yeah.
So what happens in the 2 years?
So for about 6 months.
Because people don't know what it's like to become a missionary.
Yeah, I don't either.
It ain't easy. You don't say, "Oh, I want to go," and then 3 months later you're going. Like I'm learning now, dealing with a lot of our missionaries and missionaries we support, people who want to go into the field, that it's a big spool up. There's like lots of training.
At least on our end. I'll say Harvest does it really well, but for a lot of people we met, they were like, we want to be missionaries, and someone just shipped them out, and it wreaked havoc on the rest of the world. But
so what did that 2-year interim look like as you prepared to move your lives across the world?
Yeah, so Danielle and I got married after my junior year because she did her bachelor's degree in 3 years. And so
she's an overachiever.
Yeah,
that sounds
she
about
was
right.
The valedictorian of her 23-person class.
She would have been the valedictorian.
Yeah, she would have.
Anywhere. She's an achiever.
So we had a year of being married by the time that I graduated, but she had a really good job. She was like paying off my school debt like crazy as a nanny for 2 doctors. So it's a man and a woman who both had 6-figure incomes and 2 kids and no time to watch the kids. So they took really good care of us. And so we kept that job for another 6 months. I helped a local kayaking guide making no money so that she could make some good money. And then we flew back here, started doing all the official training with our mission agency and with Harvest, and then so it was just a little less than a year and a half of being back in Katanning, where we're support raising and learning the ropes and realizing like we've got to get this figured out. We're no longer just passengers. We got to help drive the car. So did that, and then spring of 2017, we were 24 at the time. I remember sitting in the airport.
Married for 3 years.
Yep. Sitting in the airport at Pittsburgh thinking, what did I just do? We've got all of our belongings in 5 suitcases, and I've got this young bride next to me, and I'm panicking a little bit.
Yeah.
Good.
It just makes the rest of us feel a little bit better, because I would be where I would be. And then you look at all these missionary people and you're like, man, you guys are like superhumans. How would you even go about doing this? I'd be losing my mind. And so it just makes us all of us normal people feel a little bit better that that you were panicking in the airport.
I was,
because I would have been panicking in the airport.
Danielle didn't seem so worried. She just always knew that's what she wanted to do. So, and yeah, well, that's another thing. But so we moved over there. We ended up moving like 6 times in the first 6 months that we were there, just like trying to find a place to live. But we also spent 6 months learning language. Like, we're just dedicated to language, not trying to do anything else. And so we went to live in a different city than the rest of the team that was there. And that was a really trying and good time.
Trying and good. That's a
yes
oxymoronic combo.
Well, what I was going to get to was taught me how to be depressed. Sorry, I said the name of the country.
Hey, take a note, ladies.
I learned what a real relationship with the Lord was like through deep depression and anxiety in this country. And it was a beautiful thing, quite frankly. Like,
on the other side of it.
Even in it.
It was beautiful.
It's a different kind of beauty, but it was such a good lesson. Like, I really learned to read my Bible for the first time, even though I had a Bible degree. What I mean is, like, really existentially learned, sitting on a rooftop in Asia with the sun coming down on me, feeling absolutely nothing positive, and realizing like the Lord was with me in that moment. He was caring for me, and he loved me. And I cherish those times. I don't wish them on people, but some of my best experiences have been through depression. Kind of in it right now, if we get to that eventually, so we can have that conversation. But yeah, if for no other reason, I'm thankful for our time in Asia, because it taught me that the Lord takes care of his people, and sometimes he does it in and through pain. And it was just such a good lesson.
Yeah. Man, hour plus long subject on its own, but as being like an apologetics fan, some of you listeners probably know that I'm a fan of apologetics. Hoping to teach another apologetics soon. Sunshine, we'll get to that. I've always found one of the weightiest or more difficult philosophical questions to ask is the problem of pain or the problem of suffering, whether it's actual injustice or just what we would call natural suffering, getting cancer and dying, or depression or illness. I think the Bible makes it clear all over the place. When we go to a bunch of different verses, but that it's through pain and suffering where we're more acutely aware of our need and reliance on God and his strength, and not our own. Like, if it was all hunky-dory dandy all the time, you just wouldn't feel like you needed God as much, or you wouldn't acknowledge him as much, or you wouldn't recognize your own finiteness, or I don't know. All of my pinnacle moments of sanctification have been through pain and suffering and anxiety and depression. As terrible as it is to say, it's just it's the truth of my story, and I don't think it's unique. So.
My motto has become, the hard stuff's the good stuff.
Yeah.
I think one of my more intense moments of like trying to care for someone through pain was a guy that just like literally just randomly stepped through the doors of our church on a Sunday. And as I got to know him, I spent a couple days with him, and he just like unveiled this long list of abuse in his past, him as the victim and the abuser. And we walked through some of those moments, and I asked him, and I was nervous because I didn't know what he was going to say, but I asked him, like, if you can think back to that moment, tell me, where was Jesus when that happened? And I didn't expect it, but he just like broke down. Like he's trying, because everyone I think is trying to answer that question. I truly believe like everyone's trying to answer the question, what do we do with pain? Like, it doesn't fit into my natural understanding of how I think the world should work, or how God should work, how religion should work. And when he could like finally wrestle with that moment of like, my dad was beaten beating the crap out of me, but Jesus was there and he was doing something. I don't know what he was doing. It opened the door for us to have some really important conversations after that, because it was just kind of cathartic and healing for him.
That we'll have to do a whole little podcast on the problem of pain. It's a really big topic, and be advantageous to everyone in your own lives, for yourself, but then also in ministering to other people, because everybody experiences pain. So how we think about it appropriately.
The ladies got anything to add to the discussion?
They're in the blissful land of life is great, and they're young and bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. And
I think I only gained a relationship with God through trials. Like, I grew up in the church and everything, but I didn't gain an actual relationship with him until my freshman year of college, whenever I was going through it and just anxious and depressed. So
amen.
This is a good podcast for me to listen to.
Amen. Well, you're certainly not alone. And I'd say that's a common experience.
I had some secret insight knowing that answer was in there, but not sure if you were going to share it.
Yeah. The hard stuff is the good stuff, huh?
Yeah, my wife just started reading a book recently where the author challenged her readers to post these Post-it notes all over the house that say, oh crap, now I forget it. Hard doesn't necessarily mean bad. And I was like, I've been saying this for years, like, but it was so refreshing for me to like see that she was interacting with that. And
yeah, that's the thing with wives, though. They don't always listen to you very great, and you're not always the best foil.
My wife always listens.
Yeah, just like you listen to the gospel in elementary school.
Yeah. So
anyway,
Asia was just, I went there thinking my job is to change the world, and what I walked away with was my God was changing me, and if that's all I accomplished there, I was just so content with it. Selfishly, but it was a beautiful thing to get to experience that. So yeah, I went through depression twice while we were over there, started developing panic and anxiety attacks randomly, and it was just all so good. Meanwhile, we're trying to plant churches and we're trying to make disciples, and nothing went according to how we planned it in a beautiful way, and we're still feeling the effects of that today. Like, Harvest is still interacting with those people and doing something as a result.
We're trying to plant a church there. You all are trying to plant a church there. If you've been going to church, you've been getting updates. We are collectively still trying to plant a healthy church right where all those foundational bricks were laid by this guy and others. So, how long did you end up living there?
We were there 3 years. The rest of the team was there 5 years because they got there 2 years before us. And then...
Well, another thought crossed my mind before we go back, I guess, to your story, but I just feel like the Lord has blessed this staff, using the term blessed in the way you were just using it, with a lot of anxiety, depression, panic attacks. And I think it truly is a blessing. So for all you guys listening out there, if you don't know any of us well enough yet, or your interaction is primarily through the pulpit and this podcast and stuff, if you're suffering with depression and anxiety and panic attacks and everything, you're not alone.
You're in good
You're
company.
normal. It's the majority of the staff has been through that as well. The majority of the pastors. It's good to be able to laugh about it on stuff like this. But
can we talk about the fact that I once experienced an alien invasion with you while you had a panic attack?
Let's leave that for later.
Okay,
That'll be later.
Another
We're
podcast.
going chronologically, so that's after all this. But yes, the incident we alluded to earlier where we sang the doxology together out loud in the woods was right after seeing an alien spacecraft that spun me into a panic attack.
Notice we didn't wonder if it was aliens, It was aliens.
It was freaking aliens. And I lost my mind. Oh, we'll just go there. So, so sidebar. Me and a few buddies, my brother-in-law and I primarily have been going hunting in the Rocky Mountains once a year for the better part of the last decade. I think this is year 8 or 9 in a row for me coming up. We like to take anybody who's available and wants to go. So Isaac came with us a couple years ago, and it was a great trip, successful trip. And when you're on these trips, you know, you lose contact with the world. I mean, you're like
I like that you're introing our alien story with you lose contact with the world.
Because it's actually current events. The knowledge of current events goes away. So like entire hour of driving on dirt roads before we even get to where we leave the truck, you don't have cell phone service anymore. And then you hike for days into a wilderness where you have no contact with the outside world, no internet, no phone. And so you're just unaware of things. And, this is not the first UFO experience of my life, and no, I'm not a UFO crazy person, but on the drive out, the three of us, I think it was driving through Iowa, saw a UFO. And it was freaky, but hey, we were driving in a car, and so we were leaving that area. I felt a little safer. I didn't really freak out.
Yeah, we saw aliens, but we were driving, so we were just like, no big deal, we're leaving.
It was crazy. We all pointed at it.
Sucks
like,
for you guys.
You verify with your friends, like, you're seeing that, right? Yeah, you're seeing that. Yeah, we're all seeing that. Okay.
None of us have been drinking.
Yeah. So it's perfect straight line of lights at an angle, all moving in unison, very odd, no real explanation, very prominent, and then slowly just the lights shut off one at a time. That was the driving experience, right?
Yep.
So that was weird. So it was the talk of the next couple hours of the drive, but fine. So now we're half a week into this trip, living out of backpacks and tents in the middle of the wilderness. We're in a very steep valley in a true wilderness area. Like, you know, motorized anything's allowed in there. Near the border of Wyoming and Colorado. And it's late at night. We're sitting next to the tents, I think, like eating dinner or just drinking tea, hanging out, 10 o'clock or whatever. And like something from a movie. So you got to picture it, right? It's a steep, the camera can look, right? We got this steep valley that's going away from us of mountains, but it's full of dead pine trees. Because, like, we're in the bottom, and so you just get pine trees with no needles, like dead snags, that, are just going up into this valley. And it's seemingly at a very low elevation. This same string of lights.
Sean goes, we're not paying attention. Sean looks over our shoulders in the middle of the wilderness, in the middle of the night, and we're just sitting there, and his eyes get real big, and he goes, what is that? What is that?
And he starts scrambling. It's not even he starts screaming. He starts screaming at full voice where you could see, like, ping pong ball sized eyes. He's clawing backwards in the dirt away from us, like scrambling backwards. And so that just instantly, because I can't.
Best case scenario, we're about to get eaten by a bear.
Yeah, a mountain lion is pouncing on us. Like, I go in a straight fight or flight adrenaline rush. Isaac kind of like collapses into me. We're all protecting ourselves because of the way Sean reacted. It was like, we're all dying right now. An animal's coming.
I like that you made it sound like you had to comfort me.
No, but it was like the classic.
He's holding me.
It was a classic domino. I call it the domino effect. There's been several times in the woods I thought an animal was going to eat us. One time I thought we were getting attacked by a grizzly bear. It was a moose. And you think you're going to act all heroically, but what ends up happening is like the Three Stooges. Whatever spacing you have, you go boop 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 boop, and everybody just smashes into each other. So that little thing happened on the ground, and then eventually Sean points, and there's this very bright string of perfectly spaced lights. Perfectly
and if
horizontal.
It were on the ground, it would have been like, probably 10 feet. Well, maybe not even that high. Like, it was just over the.
Yeah. Like, relative to the ground horizon, it seemed very low. And because of the pine trees, it was just going what felt like was right behind the pine trees. Almost like the video game Snake, but like a string of lights. and then it stopped.
As aliens do.
It stopped, and then because of the pine trees and the lights weren't moving anymore, and you have very prominent stars in the sky, you lost track of it, and then you just lost track of it. We never picked it up again, but it's like a very prominent.
Because they were coming to get us.
So
they had unloaded and were walking our direction.
So my two weirdo friends are just as stoked could be that we're about to have an alien encounter. They are giggling and laughing, and I am just totally losing my mind. So we are packing up all these tents right now and going back to the truck, right?
I guess we're done.
That's the only logical explanation. I am not sleeping here. We are done. It's only a couple hours hike out of here to the truck. I feel a hotel in my future, which is not what we did. I had my panic attack. My brothers in Christ helped me through it. We sung the doxology out loud, doxology lovers, because that helps me. And
the UFO.
And then
FO.
Yeah, it went from being unidentified to being identified, an IFO. It was the week where it was all over the news that Elon Musk was launching his Starlink satellite clusters.
Like, what are the chances that we would see aliens while he was launching satellites? So wild.
I know. So it was like all over social media, these strings of lights. Everybody was seeing them. You can look up pictures of them. You can look up Starlink satellite trains. So it was a very well-known occurrence to everyone else at the time. We had been out of contact for a while. And yeah,
we was about to get contact.
It was a terrible night. So, okay, this story's getting too long, but it's funny in my mind.
Really rerouted.
Isaac, like a true friend, no homo, said I could sleep in his tent with him.
Yeah, the guy who started this story saying that he had to hold me.
Yeah, because the way it works in the woods is it's hard to find a large enough flat space that doesn't have a bunch of downed trees in it where you can like all be right next to each other. So Sean and Isaac had their nice little party side-by-side tents, and then my tent was all the way over here on the other side of a pile of trees by itself in the dark.
Closer to the aliens.
Closer to the aliens. It was in the direction of the spacecraft. And then I was like, nope, I'll go sleep over there. So I went over in the dark.
Soldier.
I put a book on tape as loud as it would go and took a bunch of sleeping pills. And I just said, if they get me, they get me.
How much crap are we going to get from Mike after this episode?
I don't know. So it turns out both of the UFOs we saw on that trip were just Elon Musk. And there you go. I'm just a baby.
The devil. Yeah.
So
back to depression.
Back to depression. Back to depression and anxiety. So you're in Asia. You're getting beautifully crushed by the Lord, changing your life. And then what happens?
So to end our time in that country, we trying to think how many details to include.
Yeah,
so much going on. But we got pregnant for at this point, I think it would have been the third time. We'd had no kids. We'd had a couple miscarriages before this. And it was 7 years, I think, into our marriage. No, not that many. But we got pregnant, and this one seemed like it was going to stick. We called her parents and told them, which was awesome. And then every 6 months we had to leave the country to renew our visas, which just meant like we needed a stamp from another country in the visa to show that we weren't permanent residents there, even though we kind of were. And so we tell her parents we leave the next day for another Asian country. And our first day in that Asian country, she starts bleeding. So we think, okay, we're having another miscarriage. We go to the ER there and trying to navigate the language. There were some English speakers, so that was helpful. But I remember the moment where we're sitting in this room where the doctor's trying to explain to us what's going on because he's doing an ultrasound, and clearly we're not getting it. So he types in the words on the screen so we can read it, and it says ectopic, which I've played off the fact that ectopic is from the Greek, which literally means ek is out of or from, and topic is a place, so out of place. because in that moment I felt like I was out of place. But what it meant was the baby was growing in the fallopian tube instead of the womb, and it just like crushed us. We were immediately told we needed to get a surgery or she was going to die. I, like an idiot, Googled ectopic pregnancies and found out that 1/3 of them get resolved naturally, 1/3 of them result in surgery. The woman loses her tube and the baby, and then the remaining third, the woman dies from it if untreated, because the baby will grow and her fallopian tube will rupture and she'll bleed internally before she realizes it. Now, I don't know if those statistics are still true, but that's what I was looking at. And it just kind of crushed us, obviously. And immediately the doctor goes into, okay, this is what we need to do. This is how we're going to do the surgery and all this stuff. And he gives us a moment. And
it crushed you. I'm sorry to clarify. Mike talked about his experience with ectopic on the last podcast. And my wife has had two. In your 1/3, there's no good outcome for the baby.
Right.
The resolving naturally does not mean the baby generally moves to the womb.
It's a miscarriage. There is no possibility of having
it's all
a baby.
Negative news.
Yeah.
Just shades of negative.
Yeah. Yeah, so Danielle looked at me and she said, "We can't kill our baby." And that was what set the trajectory of what was coming, which is that we made this plan in a country we've literally never been to before, that we were going to check every single day her HCG levels, because if they were increasing, that meant her body was reacting to a living baby. But if the HCG levels dropped off, the baby had miscarried, and then we'd talk about having the surgery, but we weren't willing to have the surgery while there was still a baby growing, which was a really difficult choice, because like I remember vividly sitting up one night and like checking to see if Danielle was breathing, because we were told, if you don't do this, she's going to bleed internally and she's going to die. It was just doctors freaking out and not having good bedside manner. So that, honestly, Danielle handled all of this so much better. The end of the story is it resolved naturally. We didn't get surgery. She survived, did fine. But we're like navigating, communicating across the world simultaneously. And what do we do? Like, we're navigating the language barrier, being in a place we've never been before, like all this stuff. She handled it all so well. I spiraled. And this became my biggest wrestling with depression. It was probably my second major one, but this one was definitely bigger. Lasted probably 6 months. I just didn't handle it well. I don't know. I'm the emotional one in our family. So that led to depression and really struggling and just not really being able to do our jobs, quite frankly. And so Mike and some of the other elders were over here like effectively begging us to come back just to get some rest. And my buddy Happy was about to get married, and so we made the decision we were going to stay until he got married. And we actually booked some counseling in Thailand. So now to give you the timeline, it's March of 2020, and we've got counseling in Thailand about to happen. And then the prime minister of the country that we were in alluded to the fact that they were going to shut down the country because of COVID. And then the next day, Trump calls all Americans home who are living internationally. And we're starting to see the writing on the wall. Thailand shuts down. We book something in France, same kind of thing. France shuts down, and we're realizing like the Lord is forcing us through COVID to come back to the United States. And so we booked what I think is probably the last flight out of did again. Beep. Because it left at 11:45 the day before they were going to shut the country down, 11:45 p.m. And so we had about 24 hours to prepare. My wife didn't sleep the whole time, just like getting everything ready. And we rushed out of that country to what we didn't realize was we were going to be back in the States indefinitely from that point. Luckily, our leaders here saw the writing on the wall, and as soon as we got here, they were like, "You're going to be here longer than you think. You better get to work." And I was like, I can't even put my pants on in the morning. I'm so depressed. Like I really struggled through it, and they cared for us, and I got to interact with Pastor Scott a bunch, and he was really helpful for me in that season, and took over the youth group here because the youth leader had just left. And so all the while I'm navigating depression and being forced out of this country and losing a baby. And I remember while we were still dealing with the ectopic, like that first night, thinking through our prayer was the prayer of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in Daniel, where they say to the king, our God can save us, and our God will save us. But even if he doesn't,
that's a crazy prayer.
Yeah. And so that was our prayer. Like, Lord, we know that you can save this baby and rescue us from the situation. We know that you will save this baby and rescue us from the situation. But if you don't, help us trust you. And that was really good and really helpful. And I was very comforted by Job, of all people, in this season. I was just afraid that the way I referred to it was like, Job has 42 chapters, and the first 38 are Job suffering and like wrestling through his suffering with his friends. And I kept saying, I'm okay if I'm supposed to be Job right now. I just don't want to waste my time on the first 38 chapters. I don't want to be in the first 38 chapters. I want to get to the last 4 where the Lord reveals himself and says, do you know what I'm doing? Do you know what this is like? Do you understand how I've been working the world and the things that you have questions on that you'll never know the answer to? And so I could just go, okay, like Job, I'll shut up. I'm thinking and I'm saying things I don't deserve to even be thinking or saying. I'll trust you, Lord. I just want to get to that point, and I couldn't because he was making me hurt and wrestle with the stuff that was going on. And for that reason, that's why it was so good. Frankly, the hard stuff's the good stuff. So, then it was in that season that we eventually decided, it was a year and a half. We couldn't even get into beep.
They're professionals. They'll handle it.
You guys are awesome. And so we, through a lot of things, finally realized we weren't going back there. It was our choice. And from there, it was just like, actually from the beginning of all this, 2020, my life, I just describe it as a fog. I didn't know where I was, what I was doing, or what the Lord was doing. And that fog didn't lift until a couple of years ago when I took my job at the school, where I started to see, okay, like the Lord has brought me to this point, and I can see what I think are the next couple of steps. So just like when we went to I couldn't articulate what a missionary, when we went to Asia, I couldn't articulate what a missionary was. I had to learn through the experience. It was the same sort of thing. Like I'm just so bullheaded, apparently, where I was learning, I was seeing real time that the Lord was doing something and learning in that moment, rather than having some grand plan of like, what do you want to do in 5 years? And like, I don't know. I just don't want to feel the way that I feel right now. Is that a good enough answer? You know,
can it not be like this in 5 years, and then anything else is good?
Which it's another good special note to remind our people that contentment was probably the most important lesson I had to learn in that season. Paul says, I've learned to be content in everything, in hunger or in plenty, in sleepless nights, or he doesn't say it in rest, but the implication is no matter what's happening, whether it's an abundance of good things or the absolute depletion of them, I've learned to be content. And that's Philippians 4. And his conclusion is, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. That's what he means there, is like, I can endure all things. I can trust Christ in all things, whether it's good or as I deem it bad. And that was a good lesson, because I learned to just be like, all right, Lord, I trust you. This hurts, but I'm happy to be here with you. So.
Thanks for sharing. It's awesome. So what was your old job now that you've been in the last 2 years?
I am effectively the high school principal of a small private Christian school. And apparently the Lord had to crush me to get me out of that job, because he done be crushing right now.
Well, we won't. It's too fresh. I don't want you crying on the podcast, but
tell stories about aliens. But
yeah, but I'm not crying.
Be a man.
Yeah, it's it's a favorite saying of Mike's. Again, I'm gonna put words in Mike's mouth. When he's not here to defend himself, it's the best time to do it.
Well, let's first say, if Mike were talking, he'd say how much he loves us. He loves Will and Isaac. He has a special affection, this undying love that he's never really expressed, but every time he thinks about us, a tear comes to his eye.
Yeah.
Carry on.
Okay. If you're feeling crushed out there, if you're in a season of your life where you're feeling the vice in any number of ways, I think you find through experience, and I think Mike would vouch for this, that the Lord often uses those experiences to prepare you for greater things in the future. It just, you grow more in those seasons, and then are better prepared in the future to handle more difficult things, to minister to other people who are going through similar seasons themselves, to humble you before the Lord, so that you're better equipped to serve Him and do ministry and to worship and acknowledge Him in all things. They don't feel good while you're in them. And I would say that, not most people, myself, I'll say just myself, I was not as conscious as you seem to have been, at least in your own telling of your story, of the Lord using those things for my good, right? So you talked about Romans 8 earlier, but the Lord working out all things for the good of those
who love Him, according to His purpose.
I was never as consciously aware as you seem to have been during those moments that those things were good, but after the fact, I see them as good now. And so if you're in one of those and you don't feel like it's very good right now, what's that song? You just gotta have faith. It's not always going to be like this, which is another one of Mike's favorite
things.
things.
Reminder. You texted me that the other day. That was really helpful.
Hey, well, you're welcome.
Because the irony is, the one that I'm in right now is like, I have the least amount of clarity. Like, I'm just trying to survive it.
And it's not always going to be like this. It's not. And you might not find this, that consoling, you out there in the world. Even if it's 60 more years of this, as Mike would say, it's not always going to be like this. Like, it will be okay in the end. Even if it's 80 years of crawling through glass, you're going to say it was all worth it.
This light momentary affliction is preparing us for an eternal weight of glory beyond comparison.
Amen.
Bring it on.
Bring it on. So take heart, and then, man, Christian friends.
Yeah.
Christian friends. It's one of the greatest tangible blessings I think the Lord has given us in His current absence. I mean, He's not absent in spirit, but
I'll spare the details, but I will say, like, thinking through some of the things I'm struggling through right now, one of the things I just keep thinking about are like you and Sean and Bill, but then the church at large. Like, I don't want to sin because I don't want to let them down. And even regardless of sin or not sin, I just keep thinking like, I've got this network around me. I've got this family that cares for me and loves me. Like I get a little bit anxious when I come into church on Sunday because it's just a lot of people. But every time I do, I've got people who show up and just like, I'm horrible at small talk. So if you know me and you're watching this, if I'm weird when it comes to small talk, this is why. But if you want to go into the deep end real quick, I'm your guy. But always got people who are joking around and encouraging me and just like saying things, just saying normal stuff that makes me walk out of here on a Sunday morning going, man, I feel loved. And I'm supposed to be the guy coming in here to like minister to people and shepherd people. And most of the time I feel the opposite, like I'm being cared for by other people. And I love the community. I love what Christ has set up in his family. I think of the text all the time where Jesus says effectively, whoever leaves mother and brother and sisters and fathers in this life will receive 100-fold. He says, will receive 100-fold in this life and in the next.
So it's now. You have more family now, even if you lose your biological family by joining Christ's family.
Yeah. The church is there to provide what is lacking in your heart and in your life. It is the family designed for you by Christ. It's kind of a self-centered way of looking at it, but hopefully people recognize what I'm trying to say there.
Yeah. Man, join a community group. I mean, if I can't think of a better commercial for a community group. We've never really covered my whole testimony on here, but Harvest, I think most people know by now, Harvest is really my only church. I have gone to other churches, but Harvest is my first and only church of official membership. I got baptized at Harvest. So I have more years as just being like a member in the pews of the church at Harvest by far than I do of like being a pastor at Harvest. And I remember community group, it was like a joke to me when my wife first was like, well, I've always wanted to have a community group. And I was like, oh, sweet. Yeah, we can do that. And I thought she was going to have like a woman's book club at our house, and I was going to go upstairs and watch hunting videos until they were gone. And now, 10 years into hosting community group, that's really where the relationships have grown deeper to the point where, so Isaac and I have been in community group together for years now. It's just like, I don't know if it's coincidence or happenstance that we're both pastors at the church now, but it wasn't the case. It's not, we weren't born pastors here. We were just normal guys in the church, just like all of you. And the bonds built in community group over time is really where, like even Vince, so our brother Vince, right? Vince and I are both not pastors, not on staff, normal guys in the church, community group, grew into friendship. And like you were saying, so you just alluded to me texting you this week. It's been a couple years now, my last big like spool up into panic attacks and anxiety, Vince was like, you call me middle of the night. You just text me. You want me to pray for you? I'll pray for you. He said, never worry about what time it is. If you need to call me at any time. I'll pray for you verbally on the phone. And like a dude saying that to another dude, you're like, I'm not going to call you. Like inside, like your heart's like melting. Like that's the nicest thing anybody's ever said to me. But then on the outside, your normal dude reaction's like, I'm never going to call you to have you pray for me out loud on the phone. And that's not true.
Just hold my hand right now.
And that's not true. I did take advantage of that once or twice during that period, and it was just a tremendous blessing to have someone to lean on in those times where you're in the vice, what I call being in the vice. And so, community group. Go to community group. That's how you really get to know people. It's nice to see them on Sundays. It's hard to really develop deep relationships on Sunday. You're all busy. You're going listen to the sermon, and so join a community group and stick it out. A couple years in a community group, you're going to start to know people and have relationships with them way deeper, and it's a true blessing.
Just don't be one of those people who think that the people in your group are perfect because they're not going to live up to your expectation.
No, they're not. We're all normal schmucks. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you for that. That was great.
I enjoyed it.
Yeah. So you're almost OG Harvest. You've been here for a long time. I mean, you were 12. That's pretty long. You've been here for 20 years.
I think I was 21 when they made me an elder. So I was one of the youngest. I think I beat Fred by...
Blasphemous. Elder at 21?
Yeah.
So you've been an elder for over a decade.
Yeah.
Holy smokes.
Yeah, that feels weird
Crazy,
to
right?
say it like that. That's kind of wild.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're one of those guys that make Mike feel real old, I'm sure.
As he should.
All right. Well, let's do another segment. Since we got the pointy-headed professor himself here, we're going to do our Bible study, normal Bible study segment. And Mike and I have set the precedent now that we can jump to anywhere we want to in the Bible.
Whatever you want.
Because we went from Luke to where we were in Colossians, and then last time we were in Thessalonians 1 and 2. We covered all of half of 1 Thessalonians, 2 Thessalonians. So where do you want to go?
I want to go to 2 Corinthians.
2 Corinthians what?
1, chapter 1.
Chapter 1.
Yeah.
It's not surprising given the story we just went through.
Yeah, it should fit really well, but this is a book that I've been studying for a little bit now, and when you talked about having a Bible study segment, I thought that this lesson has been so helpful for me. I want to talk about it. And I kind of want to see if you see the same things I'm seeing.
Okay.
So this will be fun.
So we're in 2 Corinthians.
2 Corinthians chapter 1.
2
We're going to
Corinthians chapter
start
1.
on verse 3. Not because the first two verses aren't important, as you alluded to earlier off camera, but I've actually done some presentations on Paul's intros in his books, and it's really interesting to see the way that he's taking a standard format. The Greek normal way of opening a letter is you say your name, you say who you're talking to, and you say the word greetings, which is charin. But he changed greetings to charis, which is grace, and peace as a reminder to his audience. So he does that in all of his books. He says his name, he says who he's talking to, and then he says grace and peace. But each one changes based on the content of the book that's to come. So in this case, he opens up with Paul, an apostle, because in this, so rather than saying a servant, rather than saying whatever, he calls himself the apostle, because one of the points of this book is actually going to be him trying to prove his apostleship to the Corinthians against what he calls the super apostles, all these people who are saying they're something when they're really not, who are saying that look at Paul, he's ugly, he looks like he's been beaten with a stick, which he has, and God doesn't love him. He's not an apostle. And so he's going to prove his apostleship in this book. So he introduces himself as an apostle, and just little things like that.
Apostle really means sent out one, right?
Yeah, sent one.
So
but specifically in this
sent
case,
by Christ.
It's like the big 12 he's referring to, although he's the 13th. But yeah, sent out on mission from Jesus himself.
By the will of God.
Yeah. So we're skipping all that. But
okay.
It's not unimportant, because we're going to go to the meat of how he starts his letter. So I'll just read the whole thing, and you tell me. I'm gonna stop in verse 7. You tell me what's the main point of what he's saying. I'm pretty sure you already know the answer, but
I'm going to wing it. I have not studied this in advance.
Well, it's going to be one word. I'm just looking for one word at the beginning, and then we'll talk about details.
Okay.
2 Corinthians 1:3. Blessed be the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Father of mercies and God of all comfort, who comforts us in all of our affliction, so that we may be able to comfort those who are in any affliction with the comfort with which we ourselves are comforted by God. For as we share abundantly in Christ's sufferings, so through Christ we share abundantly in comfort too. If we are afflicted, it is for your comfort and salvation, and if we are comforted, it is for your comfort, which you experience when you patiently endure the same sufferings that we suffer. Our hope for you is unshaken, for we know that as you share in our sufferings, you will also share in our comfort. What's the main point? What's he trying to get across to?
Man, I feel like I'm way out on a limb.
Give me
for this
one word.
I guess it's got to be comfort.
It's comfort. Of course, it's comfort in suffering. So, like he says, affliction and suffering there several times. But his main idea, his main overarching idea, what he's trying to get across to them is
My
comfort.
nice ESV even titles this section, "The God of all comfort."
God of all comfort, right there. Yeah, because he starts with that title at the end of verse 3, the God of all comfort. So the first beautiful thing to see here is, well, you tell me, what is the relationship? So he's arguing that God comforts his people. Why does God comfort his people?
So that we may be able to comfort those who are in any affliction.
Yeah, the interesting thing is, like, he's not just bringing his people in. It's not a therapy session where you walk out going, okay, you fixed me, I'm good, here's my money. His expectation is that that's like a segue into the reality that he's trying to get, which is God comforts his people, especially and definitely in suffering, so that they will be a comfort to other people. And he says, he comforts us, this is the beginning of verse 4, in all our affliction. Every single affliction. Now, let's just assume for a second Paul is only talking about himself and this can't be applied to us. Still, nonetheless, the stuff that Paul has gone through, he's arguing that every bit of it, God has comforted him in it so that he can be a comfort to other people. But now we ought to and should recognize that the reality and truth behind this is that this is the expectation of everyone. Like, I'm going to be comforted in all my affliction because God is the God of all comfort. But the expectation is that I ought to be someone who comforts other people.
Yeah, the transition there of "so that," in my mind, implies the word purpose. I mean, it not implies, it's explicit. There's a purpose behind the affliction and behind the comfort he gives you in the affliction. And that purpose is that you gain the ability to comfort other people who are in any affliction. And I think this fits naturally with experience. Everything we just talked about in your autobiography, things alluded to in mine and in others, like, it's when you've gone through these periods of crushing that you just feel, I'm using the word comfortable in the wrong way, you feel much more capable, let's say, of interacting with other people's times of suffering. Like, it's not alien to you. And having gone through it and being comforted by God and potentially others, you're much more prepared, equipped, to then minister to those people in their times of affliction. Vince is doing a great class right now on this idea that, like, all Christians at all times are both needed and needy. Like, we all feel needy at times, and then often we're waiting until we're not needy to be useful to others, to be needed by others. So, like, most Christians think of, I'm doing the class a disservice because it's much better than this, but you often think of it as like I'm either like a switch, a 0 or 1. Like, I'm in a period where I'm needy and I need other people to minister to me, and then eventually I'll be good. I'll have gotten my counseling and be fixed, and then I'll be in a position where I can fix other people. And it's this idea that, like, it's always going to be both. Now, sometimes varying degrees of one or the other, but you're needed by others at the same time as you're needy of others in the church all the time. I think I don't know. My mind brought it up, so I guess it's relevant.
The first thing I thought of was the woman at the well in John 4, where Jesus is talking to her about living water, and he says, "If anyone drinks the water that I have, it will become in him streams of living water." And all I can think of is that, like, what's the point of streams in a person? A person that's thirsty just needs the input. But if we're talking about water that's moving, the expectation is that it's coming out of them. It's going through them and coming out of them. It's the same sort of thing here. Like, God is pouring his comfort into his people with the expectation and understanding that the result is it flows out into others. Like, you think of Psalm 23, where he says, "My cup overflows." What's the purpose of a cup overflowing? like it's wasteful unless the point is for the ground to soak it, the ground around that cup to soak up the water, for the people around that person to soak up the comfort and the love of God in his people.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So now I want to get to the part that I'm not so sure about.
Well, where are we at? So we're
still
done with 7
in this same section generally. So we've established the fact that his point is comfort, that God gives comfort to his people so that they'll comfort others, that Paul makes this argument that in as much as you suffer, you will be comforted. So what, in these verses that we just looked at, does he explain what comfort is? I think the answer is yes, but I want to see if you see it too. And I'm looking especially at verse 6.
Ask the question again.
What is comfort? Does Paul define it here? Or explain it? So in verse...
Patient endurance.
Yeah. Okay, so he says, here's what Will's looking at. If we are afflicted, it is for your comfort and salvation. This is verse 6. And if we are comforted, it is for your comfort, which, so he's describing comfort, which you experience comfort when you patiently endure the same sufferings that we suffer. So there's an aspect of patient endurance and there's an aspect of suffering to it. So I could only come up with 2 conclusions here. He's either saying that the suffering is part of the comfort, or that the comfort comes, so the comfort either comes in the suffering, it's like intertwined with it, or it comes as a result of the suffering. It's something that comes right after.
Yeah, I was actually going to, until you gave me option B, I was going to push back. The way I'm reading this, I'm going to say option B. So it's when, this is directly from the text, when you patiently endure the suffering is when you experience the comfort. So it's a result. It's not saying that the patient endurance is the comfort. It's that the patient endurance of suffering produces or results in comfort.
Yeah, I mean, textually, it's a possibility, but I agree with you. I think the emphasis, because you said when you suffer, you experience the comfort. So the suffering could be the comfort, but I don't think that's probably not his point here.
Yeah.
So
that's what it's producing.
Yeah. So what it seems like he's saying is that every time you suffer, what's going to be produced out of this is comfort.
It ties right back into the Philippians verses you quoted earlier, where it's the times of neediness, or the times of, what did you call it, deficiency? I don't know. When he's suffering, it's the times of suffering that you're learning to be content in all things. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. The comfort and contentment is a learned capacity.
They don't come naturally.
And if you're out there and have lived more than a few years, you know that there's always the next thing you need to be content, and it won't make you content either.
Yeah.
So it's a learned thing, and it seems like Paul's pretty explicitly saying here that going through times of affliction are where you're going to is what's going to produce the comfort and contentment.
So in the last couple of months since I've been studying this passage, that part right there has been such a refreshing reminder to me. I remember being in this moment of temptation, and this verse is fresh on my mind, and I realize God through Paul is telling me patiently endure, because the comfort, the thing that you're actually looking for, the joy, the pleasure that you think you're going to find in your sin, you're going to find it by just waiting for me in this moment. And it's like, it has been so helpful in my depression right now. Just like you said, it might be 60 years of crawling over broken glass. He's saying, I'm going to comfort you. You just have to patiently endure. You just got to wait. You got to trust me. You got to be in it. Don't give up. Don't give in to the temptation. Don't give in to the sin that's trying to wrap its claws around you. Patiently endure, because there's comfort that's coming as a result of this thing. It's not like you're going to suffer and here I'm going to give you a biscuit at the end, or a reward for suffering. It's like you have to suffer, and the suffering is a part of it. The comfort is waiting to be the flower that's produced from the dirt of the suffering, of the affliction. So it's been so helpful for me.
Interesting sidebar. I'm learning here in my new fancy Bible software that this is a comfort is the same Greek root word. This is different usage here, so it's not referring, but it's the same root word that is used to give the name to the Holy Spirit. The
Comforter.
The helper, the comforter,
Mm-hmm.
that's used as a proper noun in other places. It's I don't know if that ties in. I just thought it was interesting. It's they're from the same Greek word.
That's cool.
So, okay. So verse 8.
That's all I had. Do you want to keep
No,
going?
we got to go to the end of the paragraph. I love
Okay.
the next part, because I use I use verses 8 and on all the time to answer the question why.
All right. So you want me to read
It's
that
like
whole
such
paragraph?
a common question. Why? Yeah, let's read that one.
All right. Verse 8. For we do not want you to be unaware, brothers, of the affliction we experienced in Asia, haven't we all? For we were so utterly burdened beyond our strength that we despaired of life itself. Indeed, we felt that we had received the sentence of death, but that was to make us rely not on ourselves, but on God who raises the dead. He delivered us from such a deadly peril, and he will deliver us. On him we have set our hope that he will deliver us again. You also must help us by prayer, so that many will give thanks on our behalf for the blessing granted us through the prayers of many.
Yeah, this is a very consistent reference verse for me, because often when you're in these times and you're in the vice, or whatever, I keep saying that. I hope everybody knows what a vice is. It's a big metal thing that has a crank on it, and you squeeze stuff with it. Everybody knows what a vice is.
Why not?
Yeah, times of affliction. To me, it feels like you're in a vice. You're being crushed. We've all used the phrase "God's crushing me" right now. And
Indiana Jones missteps and the big stone catches him. That's what we're talking about.
You got it. So we're in these periods, and like I said before, I don't think all of us often have the clarity of the blessing of comfort and contentment that's being produced in us by being in these periods. And so, I think it's just natural question. It's like, why? You're talking about that guy you were ministering to at the church, going through abuse in his childhood. Where was Jesus? Jesus was with him. And then, the question that always accompanies the problem of pain: why is God allowing this to happen? If God is all good, if God is all powerful, those are rhetorical. He is. Then why? And that's always the question, is why. And I use this verse predominantly to help think through that. So let's try to answer the question why. So Paul says, we do not want you to be unaware. We were so afflicted beyond our strength that we despaired of life itself.
And thought we were going to die in verse 9.
Well, and let's not only thought they're going to die, in verse 8, that we despaired of life itself. I mean,
Allah.
in regular 21st century English, he didn't want to live anymore.
Yeah.
He wanted to die. It's not, I'm not saying he was necessarily suicidal, but he would have been happy to die because life was so uncomfortable. The suffering was so great. They did not want to go on living.
To die is gain. He was on that half of the...
Right. And so in verse 9, he answers the question why. Right? In verse 9, indeed, we felt that we had received the sentence of death. We didn't want to live anymore. In fact, it was so extreme, we just felt like God was killing us. Right?
Yeah.
But that was to make us rely not on ourselves, but on God.
Who raises the dead. So he's like, even if he killed us, we were supposed to learn that he was going to raise us when he killed us. That's really beautiful.
Yeah, I'm trying to pull this up, and in NASB, that's not what I want.
Yeah, I think of Abraham and his being asked to sacrifice Isaac, because Hebrews refers to it as he was convinced that God could even raise him from the dead, that if he had to follow through with killing his son, God would raise him from the dead. And that's what Paul is saying here about himself. Like, that was to make us rely not on ourselves, not trusting that we were going to get ourselves out of this rut, not trusting that we could fix this situation, but that even if the worst came, God was in control and was going to rescue us out of that. That's crazy.
Yeah, and I'm trying to remember if strength is referenced in a different translation, but yeah, it's just so that we don't rely on our own strength. Like, sometimes, I think this verse is specifically telling us that sometimes you're put in positions in life where it's beyond your depth. Like, I don't have the capacity to handle this. It's like, I'm getting crushed. I cannot bear this load. I mean, that's literally what we mean by being crushed. Is like, the load's too heavy. I can't bear it. And that's to point us to the fact that, like, yeah, we'll quit relying on your ability to bear loads. Yeah. Like, the God of the universe can bear the load. Yeah. And just wants you to cry out to him, and he'll help you bear the load.
Yeah, I've heard people argue that, like, Christianity is just a crutch. But it's like, if you are walking around this life and don't think that you need a crutch, I mean, it's a bad metaphor, but, like, then there's something more broken in you than just your leg. Like, I love the idea of being more dependent on Christ and being weaker than I was the day before, because, like he says later in this book, my strength will be, or my power will be made perfect in weakness. So I got to be weaker to reveal the reality that he is strong, that he's the one holding me up. And if you can't be okay with that, you got a little too much hubris.
Yeah, and so that's another perfect verse, right? It's our weakness displays his strength. Yeah. And so when you ever... The answer makes sense when you're not being crushed. It's sometimes less satisfying in the moments where you're being crushed, but I really do believe it's told to us explicitly in several places that's the point. The point is to show you that you're not adequate for the load. Like, he wants you to rely on him, and he's going to provide you the comfort. Mm-hmm. He is the God of all comfort, and you're going to come out changed on the other side.
And I'm thinking about, like, the opposite reality, which is that we live in a society that's constantly trying to comfort itself. Like, add in these things, you'll be more comfortable. And what's being talked about is a different kind of comfort there. Like, this is an opposition, a battle of two comforts. Because if you're trying to make yourself more comfortable and don't go through these sufferings that produce comfort, you end up being less satisfied. Like, that was one of the things I loved about being in Asia. It was like all the comfortable stuff was stripped away. So I got to the point where I understood that Christ was my comfort in a way that I could never receive from the stuff.
Yeah, you got a more tangible experience of Paul's Philippians verse of, when you're in Asia, you don't have all the niceties of life that modern America provide us, and they can really be a hindrance to experiencing true biblical comfort from God or contentment in Jesus and the Lord, instead of you seek comfort and contentment from the created things, which is idolatry. Strong statement, but I think
just leave it there.
I'm just gonna leave it there. All right. Well, hey, that's great. Well, hey, brother, it's been a pleasure having you on here.
For me too.
Yeah, we're gonna get you on more.
Cool.
Just because I like talking to you better than I like talking to Mike. I think he lets me talk more too, so that's good. Yeah.
It's a lot for me to talk so many words. I'm gonna go home and just be silent. My poor wife is gonna catch the brunt of this conversation.
Well, I'll speak for everyone listening. We are all blessed to have you as a brother here, and I'm excited to have you as a on-staff brother here, and I'm just really looking forward to what the Lord's going to do with all that crushing He's done in your life.
Me too. Can my title be the broken pastor? Just like funnel all the broken people.
You already have a title. We just don't tell it to you to your face. You're the crying pastor, so.
You have told me that to my face, actually. And that's only going to get worse from here on out, buddy, so.
All right. Well, hey, we love all you guys. Hopefully this was a good introduction to Isaac for you guys who haven't had the opportunity to talk to him yet. Hey, when you see him around, now you've seen him on here, you know his name, just pull him aside and talk to him. And don't do small talk.
Just go right to the deep
because he's
end.
got the autism, and so he only likes to talk about deep things.
Thought we were going to get to that on the next podcast.
All right. See you, everybody.